single message which says that the packaging is done and rest all is handled by this machine. So, so in this way, like we can resolve that issue. And as I told, this is a PubSub model, right? So in this case, uh, this central machine is a topic which, yeah, this machine is a topic, and now uh, I would like, yeah, uh, it's a question for y'all that to figure out who is the publisher in this case and who is the subscriber in this case. If y'all could, you know, uh, help me identify who is the publisher and who is the subscriber in this case. You can even unmute yourself and answer. Okay, we have a few responses. Publisher is the microservice server, packaging service. Yeah, third party says user is the subscriber and packaging service is the publisher. Okay. The microservices which receive the messages are the subscribers. Exactly. Yeah. So in this case, it actually depends on uh, which scenario we are considering. Let's suppose the user places an order and this order then sends a message to this machine and this machine then forwards the message over here, not forwards, but it sends a message over here and here. In this case, these two are the subscribers and this is the publisher and this remains the topic. And in the other scenario wherein this microservice sends the message and that then two messages sent over here and here. In this scenario, these both are subscribers and this is the publisher. So hope this is clear. Okay, what is microservice in this context? Ishmael is asking. Uh, so this packaging service, this delivery service, and this notification service. These three are microservices in this case. Uh, so that was the question, right, Sushma? Uh, Also, any more doubts regarding this PubSub model? Hope it is like completely clear. This definition. It is a messaging service, as you saw. It exchanges data amongst microservices and also removes the dependency among services. Okay, so I'll discuss about the topic. So, uh, so okay. The topic is basically a place wherein publisher puts some data and subscriber then takes the data from the topic. And if we consider these two, like this YouTube example, in this case, uh, the like the actual model which is there in this model, the subscriber actually pulls the data, but in this case, the topic notifies them. So the subscriber actually don't pulls the data in this case, but in this case, the topic itself like pushes the notifications onto each of the subscribers. So it is kind of a modified PubSub, but again, it's the idea is same, right? And you wanted to know something about like something more about topic, right? So topic is you can consider topic as a place wherein the publisher puts some data and subscriber pulls the data which is present on the topic. Does that clear? The Telegram Messenger service. Uh, Telegram Messenger service. Uh, yes, even Telegram messaging service could be considered as a PubSub model. Could be considered. Again, the internal implementation, I'm not sure about that, but then if we, it could be implemented as a PubSub service, PubSub model. I mean. Okay. Uh, yes, topic is a storage of data, but then there are few differences. One of the differences is, uh, as far as I have read, the topic stores data for a limited amount of time. And the time depends upon like, who is allotting the time. But then a topic stores the data for a limited amount of time. Hope that clear. Atharva. Any more doubts? Or y'all want to not want me to repeat some part, or maybe anything else? So should I go ahead? Yes. So we did this example. Yeah. Now coming to the next topic, which is BigQuery dataset. So this is fairly a simple topic. BigQuery datasets are actually top-level containers that are used to organize and control access to your tables and views. So, so yeah, the BigQuery datasets are basically top-level containers which are used to organize and control accesses to the tables and views which are present inside of it. And now, what is BigQuery tables? Uh, BigQuery tables are very similar to traditional relational tables, and also as they are very similar, so they contain individual records organized as rows, and each record then is composed of multiple columns, also called as fields. And yeah, so this was about what tables are, BigQuery tables are, and this is like, this is how the hierarchy looks like. Uh, just a second. So this brown container which you can see is the project. So this one is the project, and each project will have a single data set. So in this case, Hacker News is the data set, and yeah, each project can have only a single data set, and each data set in turn has multiple tables. So these are the multiple tables which are present inside of this data set. So yeah, this was pretty much like about the data set and tables and the relation, like how they look. Any doubts in this part, or everything is clear? Yes, SQL is used for querying the data sets, or I should say the tables. And as I said, BigQuery tables are very similar to relational tables, so SQL works like perfectly fine for these tables. So I'll be going to the next topic now, which is pipeline. So, okay. So firstly, let us understand what pipes are. A pipe is a method for connecting multiple components together. And by components, what I mean is these components could be uh, computers, or they could be, yeah, VMs. VMs are computers only. So they could be VMs. They could be any data source, or maybe anything which is present inside. cloud. So yeah, so pipe is a method for connecting components together, and data moves from one component to the next via a series of pipes. And also, while representing pipes, we generally show data flow from like from the left side to the right side. So this is a convention. So keep in mind. Now, a pipeline is a series of pipes that connects multiple components together. So they form a protocol. So yeah, a pipeline is a series of pipes. So I'll be talking about more like I'll be talking more about this pipeline in maybe the next slide. So in this slide, I've shown actually what we'll be doing uh, in this particular lab data flow. So we'll be first creating uh, a data set, and which will be having a table, and then we'll be setting a pipeline. Uh, the- like in this case, one side of the pipeline is connected to a data source, and the other is connected to the table which we created. And then the data will be transferred from this data source to these tables, and we can you know query the data over here. So yeah, and something more about pipes is actually, this pipe might seem very simple in this figure, but internally it is like there are lots of connections inside of this to make this connection, make this pipe. So doing this manually is a very hectic task, and for this reason, Google Cloud provides us various templates for making this pipe. And in this lab, we'll be using like one of those templates, and the template which we'll be using is this template, Cloud Topic 2 BigQuery template. So yeah, so any doubts still here? No doubts. So should I like continue? So acha, now I had a question for you all. The question is, I created this data set, right? I also created a table. I created this pipeline. So I used the concept of data sets and tables. Also, I used the concept of pipes, right? Now, uh, even we studied cloud pops up, right? So, if you all could answer where in this figure have we used cloud pops up? Uh, is the question clear? So, was the question clear? Yeah, yeah, I'll do that. So, So what we did was in this lab, what we'll be doing is we'll be first creating a data set, then we'll be creating a table, then we'll be setting up a pipeline. Now, how we'll be setting this pipeline, I'll come to that point, and we'll be connecting this pipeline to a data source and to a table which we created. And this data source, like we we aren't creating this data source. It is provided by Google. And now coming to this pipeline setup, uh, actually, it like the setup of this pipeline isn't that simple as how it looks. So internally, it has multiple multiple connections, and there might be multiple computers as well in this particular part. So uh, configuring this pipeline and setuping this pipeline is quite a hectic task to do. So for that reason, Google has provided us with multiple templates for building this pipeline. And uh, one of those templates is Cloud Topic to BigQuery template. And we'll be using this template to configure this pipeline. Uh, Looked at what pipelines are, and we used a pipeline over here. Now, my question is, where did we use offset in this piece? So you're saying pipeline will act as a topic. No, actually, that's not the answer. Any more answers? Okay, so I'll say the answer. So in this case, uh, the table was the subscriber. The pipeline wasn't anything. It was just a connection, and the data source is the topic because it has the data. And now coming to what are publishers? Publishers actually, I forgot to mention a point. The data present over here is the real-time data. So the publishers are in the background, and actually there's a collection of publishers, and all of those are sending the data over here. And what data this is? This is a taxi rides data. And it has like yeah, it's a taxi rides data which will have the count of persons traveling at a at a particular interval in a particular interval in I guess US. So it's a US based data, and uh, yeah, so it's a real time data and it's a US based data. So in this case, these are the publishers. This was the topic which will have the data, and this is the subscriber, and probably we'll be querying this table over here. So we'll be querying this table in the lab. Uh, so things are clear to you, right? Uh, yes. Any more responses? Only Prashant and Apurva understood. Okay, so do anyone has any doubt?
Yes. Hello. Is my screen visible? Yeah. Okay. So before going into data prep, I would just like to give you a little insight about what exactly happens in data analytics. So basically, first thing is to capture data, that is data ingestion at any scale. Now, this data you can get from anywhere like Cloud PubSub, Cloud IoT Core, data transfer services, storage transfer services, and all those things. So the first step is capturing data. Next is processing the data. After that, you have storing the data, that is persisting the data. So after processing the data, you'll have to persist it somewhere, like you'll have to store it somewhere. So for that also GCP provides services like the cloud storage, BigQuery, etc. Once the data is stored, you can do anything, like you can analyze it using the BigQuery. And then once the data is analyzed, it can be used to create machine learning models, or you can connect it to dashboards to display the data and all of that. So this was just an overview that I'm giving. uh, just Yeah. So till now we have covered data proc was covered in yesterday's session by Anuj Ragani, and data flow Rakesh just covered it. So now we'll be talking about data prep. Okay, so these are the three managed services that Google offers for the processing of data. Okay, data proc, data flow, and data prep. So basically, what do these three services do is for capturing, processing, and persisting the data. Pipelines, I think he's already spoken about it, so I won't go into that. So before going into data prep, I would like to tell you like what exactly is the difference between data proc and data flow. Data proc was taught yesterday. Data flow was just taught to you by Rakesh. So basically, how do you know like when should you use data proc and when should you use data flow? So this decision can be made if your uh, uh, if you have any workload on Hadoop, Spark, or something like that. Okay, if it works on Hadoop or Spark infrastructure, then you have to go for data proc because it provides you like templates for code, like these functions like map reduce and all the templates for that. So you have to use data proc. Then if you do not have any dependency on Hadoop, Spark, Hive, or any such thing, then another question is whether you want to actually like manually see the DevOps part. Okay, the DevOps operation, like clusters, managing clusters, or the scaling. If you want to manually scale things and manually handle all the DevOps, then you go for data proc because that provides customization. Whereas if you want it to be completely serverless, like auto scaling and all of that stuff, and completely serverless, then you go for data flow. Now, what happens is both in data proc as well as data flow, one common thing is you need to write code. Okay, so in data flow, it's like you use either Python, Java, all of that. In data proc, it's a little more complex, like Hadoop, Spark, and MapReduce and all of that, and templates will be provided. Now, in case you don't want to do anything at all, like you do not want to write code, then we have a thing called cloud data prep. Okay, so this is basically an intelligent data service for visual. Am I audible? Uh, oh, okay. Oh, I didn't share my screen. Sorry. Yeah. So you have the cloud data prep that is for visualizing data. Okay. So here it's, I mean, sorry, you can like visually control everything, like, features like drag and drop and clicking everything, just clicking the buttons. When I give you the walkthrough of the lab, you can see how exactly it works. So basically, it's an IDE to build pipelines. So even though it's an IDE to build pipelines and you don't have to write any code or anything, you're just, visualizing everything. But still, when you'll be executing those pipelines behind the scenes, you will actually be using data flow to run those pipelines. So data flow, like behind the scene, is working, but you don't have to do the coding or any of that. Okay, the code in Java, Python, or anything, you don't have to do any of that stuff. So cloud data prep is serverless. Okay, you don't have to manage like how many servers will be required or anything. So it'll just provide one server. If it feels that the load is more, it'll create many clusters and instances and all of that. Everything will be managed. So in this case, what happens is the entire business logic of the pipeline, data processing, you can focus only on that. You don't have to manually think of anything else. You can just focus on the data processing part. But oh, okay, so how does data prep fit into GCP? So just as I told you, the three stages that you have, that is ingesting data, processing the data, and analyzing the data. Okay, so there are services provided by GCP for ingesting data. They are the cloud PubSub, cloud data flow, cloud storage. All this, you collect data from there. Now that data is raw data. What do you mean by raw data? Now, you can have null values, or you can have many errors and all, like in the type, or the data type, or it's mismatched data type, or any of that stuff. So all that raw data goes into cloud data prep. Now okay, so cloud data prep, as I told you, it is for data wrangling. Data wrangling means manipulating the data, processing the data, and cleaning it up. Now once the data is clean, then you can use it for analysis by the other GCP services, like you can build machine learning models of on it and all of that. Okay. So this is what I was telling you here. So you have these systems, cloud storage, BigQuery, all of this, and these are the pipelines that are built. Okay, cloud data prep. So you are just using it as a visual tool. Okay, to build a pipeline, you're just doing data wrangling by drag and drop. Once I go through the walkthrough, you will understand how exactly it looks. You can just look at the data, and behind the scenes the code is being written in either Python, Java, or whichever language it is. So it is written in behind the scenes, and data flow will execute all of that, right? And then these are the target systems, like to persist the data into some data storage. Oh yeah, so this is the cloud data prep architecture. Okay, so I'll be giving you a walkthrough of the lab, and telling you exactly how the pipelines and all of that work. Any doubts till then? Hello? No, you don't have to write any code at all. It's just like a visualization tool. You can just, drag, drop, and, apply. There's this thing called recipe, which I'll show you in the labs, okay? The recipe and all of that. And so all the steps will be performed on the data that you pass into it. And the code will be written like behind the scenes and passed on to data flow. Can I go to the this walkthrough, or does Rakesh want to do it first? Okay. Oh, is my screen visible?
Yes, it
Hello.
is.
Okay, so this is the lab for data prep. Okay, so we'll just see what it is. So, Cloud Data Prep by Trifacta is an intelligent data service for visually exploring, cleaning, and preparing the data for analysis. It is serverless, like I told you, and it works at any scale. Okay, auto scaling and all those features are there. And there is no infrastructure to deploy and manage. Easy data preparation with clicks and no code. So in this lab, what we'll be doing is we will be manipulating a data set. You can import data sets, correct or mismatch data, transform data, and also join data. Okay, so I'll start the lab now. Okay, so I think this, I assume you all will be familiar with how to open the Google console and all, so I'll just skip over that. So the first thing that we need to do is create a cloud storage bucket in our project. So, okay, this is the cloud console. Yeah, cloud storage browser. We create a bucket. You can name it whatever you want and leave the rest as just default and create the bucket. So the bucket was created. We can check if the, yeah, so the task is completed. Next step is we'll be initializing the cloud data prep. Hmm, yeah. Yeah, so finally, after accepting everything, we have initialized data prep. You can check your progress here, and that's completed. Next, we'll be creating a flow. Um I think Rakesh already told you what a data flow and all of that is. So a cloud prep uses a Flow workspace to access and manipulate data sets. Okay, so we'll be creating a flow. Create a blank flow. We have to rename it to the United States Federal Election Commission 2016. Okay. So once that's done, we'll be importing data sets. So we add a data set, import data set. Then we click on this one and we add the CN 2016. We add this. We'll rename it to Candidate Master 2016. We'll do the same for this one as well. And this will be renamed as Campaign Contributions 2016. Once they're done, we'll import and add to Flow. Yeah, so now you can see it's here. We'll edit the recipe. So now we'll actually start doing the data prep. Yeah, so you can see all the columns and you can even see the data type like of each column, like it's whether it's a string or what type of data type it is. This is a state and these are all the values. So it's basically like a visual tool. You can actually see what is going on and this is the data. You can even click on the details and check the details of it, column details. So it provides you a summary of everything like outliers, invalid, unique, mismatched, all of that. Okay, so moving on to the next part. Okay, so we have to go to column number 6 and it has a few mismatch values. The transformer page is where you build your transformation recipe and see the results applied to the table. When you're satisfied with what you see, you execute the job against your data set. So, okay. Okay, so column 5 provides the data from 1990 to 2064. So we have to widen column 5 and click to select the tallest bin, which represents the year 2016. So this will create a step where these values are selected. And once you do that, automatically you can see here, it's like a query that is written there. So basically column 5, we'll just widen it. And this is the tallest bin that is for the year 2016. So everything for the year 2016 gets selected and you can see what happens here. it's like a query that is written there, where date 2016 111 less than or equal to column 5. So that's the query. So you add that. So that gets added to your recipe. So basically, whenever you import a data, then you can give it the standard recipe, and it'll follow those steps on that particular data set. So it's like how you create a recipe. You just have a fixed recipe, and then every time you just have to get the ingredients and then follow that particular instruction set that is given in the recipe. So it's similar to that. Okay, so now once that's done, we move to column 6 and see the mismatched portion of the header to select the mismatched rows. Okay. So column 6, you can see there is some mismatched data. Just okay. So the reason for mismatch is because it is marked as a state column, whereas there are some values, non-state values such as US. So as a result, it shows over here that there are 1270 mismatch values. So to correct that, we click X in the top of the suggestion panels to cancel the transformation. Then we click on the flag icon and change it to a string column. So US is a valid string, even though it's not a valid state, but it's a string. So what do we do for that? We change it to string, and you can see the mismatch thing is gone. Next will be we'll filter on just the presidential candidates, which are those records that have value P in column 7 in the histogram for column 7. Okay, so we don't want H, we just want P. So we'll click on the P column. Yeah, so vex column 7 is equal to P. So we don't want wherever it is H, we don't want that. So we'll add that as well to the recipe because we want it only for presidential candidates. Okay, so next step is to wrangle the contributions file and to join it in. Okay, so all these steps are done. So we'll next is wrangle the contributions file and join it in. So on the join page, you can add your current data set to another data set or recipe based on information that is common to both data sets. So before you join the contributions file to the candidates file, first we'll clean up the contributions file. Okay, so these are the steps you'll be doing for that. Okay. Now we'll select on the campaign contributions. We'll just clean this before joining the two of them. Add a recipe. Okay, so what we'll be doing it to clean it, we'll be removing extra delimiters in the data set. So for that, this is the wrangle language command. So we copy that. And once we go here, we add a new step to the recipe. And see, it gives you a set of already pre-built functions that you can do is in data prep. But if you want to make it more granular or you want to add some custom functions, some customization, then it wouldn't work with data prep. So in such cases, you'll have to go for data flow. Okay, like because in this you have a built-in set of functions and transformations that you can do. So we are removing delimiters at the start and end. So we've added that. Then we'll add another one. Now we'll join data sets. So new step, join data sets. Yeah. So here it is. That will be candidate master. Okay, accept. Okay, so after doing that, we'll see the join keys section. Okay, in first common keys. So there are many common values that data prep suggests as join keys. So in the add key panel in the suggested join key section, we have to click on this one, that is column 2 is equal to column 11. So let's go ahead and do that. Column 2 is equal to column 11. Then save and continue. We select all the columns. To add all columns of both data sets to the joint data set, we did that. Then we'll review and add it to the recipe. Yeah, so that is done. Now, next is to get the summary of the data. So generate a useful summary by aggregating, averaging, and counting the contributions in column 16 and grouping the candidates by IDs, names, and party affiliation in columns 2, 24, 8 respectively. Okay, so we'll be aggregating, averaging, and counting contributions in column 16 and grouping the candidates by their IDs, names, and party affiliation in columns 2, 24, 8 respectively. So this is just a query for that. I mean the transformation. So that will be a new step. So sum, average, and count. So we got these columns, sum, average, and the count. Next, okay. So now we can see that these are not meaningful names. Like, what do you mean by column 24, column 2, column 8? It's not, it doesn't provide a proper insight of what that column is about, right? So next, we'll be renaming these columns to make, sense of it, or to make it easier to interpret what exactly they are. So we'll add a new step in our recipe to rename them. So we add it. So you can see the first one has been renamed to candidate ID. Second one is the candidate name, the party affiliation, then total contribution sum, average contribution sum, and the number of contributions. Next step will be to round the average contribution amount. So we don't want so many decimal places and all. It doesn't look very nice. So the next transformation is to get the average. So if, the round it up, round the average contribution sum. So you can see we've got it all rounded values. Yeah. So that was it. So what all did we do? We created a cloud storage bucket, initialized cloud data prep, then created a flow, imported data sets, we prepped the candidate file, wrangled the contribution file, we joined it. Now all of this, for us, it seems very easy. Like we're just, it's just like visualizing stuff and dragging, dropping, clicking this and all. But whenever we will be executing the pipeline behind the scenes, there is data flow that will be running. Okay, so and we already saw that it has some predefined built-in set of transformations that you can apply. So if you want it to be more granular or you want more customization, then you would go for data flow. And if you have any workload based on this Hadoop and Hadoop, Spark, Hive, and all of that, you would go for data proc. Even if you want to manage your own clusters, or you want to, actually manage the scaling and DevOps and all, then also you would go for data proc. So I guess that's done. I'm done with my part. Rakesh, you can continue with your walkthrough.
Thanks a lot, Riddhi, for the introduction in the beginning, and to my fellow speakers, Rakesh and Sara, for giving the session so well. Now I'll be beginning with the different APIs, AI-powered APIs especially, that Google Cloud Platform provides to us. And now I'll be just sharing my screen. Can someone confirm if the screen is visible? Thank you, Riddhi. So we are here for the AI-powered APIs part that Google Cloud Platform provides to us, and in particular in the data science and ML track of 30 days of Google Cloud program, we will be looking at the Cloud Natural Language API Quick Lab. So that's covering the Cloud Natural Language API. So regarding the topic of natural language and API, we come across these words and we have the questions: what is an API and what is natural language processing? So those are the two things that we'll cover first, and then we will have the walkthrough of this quick lab. So firstly, what is an API? Simply the full form that most of us know, which is Application Programming Interface. And it is that interface that allows our application, it is an intermediary that allows our application to send requests to the API and obtain a specific response from it. And this interface is application and the logic of the API can interact with each other. Now we will see in the quick lab as well, and we have also seen with our prior experience that this interface can be a piece of code that we write in any programming language such as Python or Java, or it can also be written on the command line, such as we have the G-Cloud command line utility with which we can make API calls, or it can also be user interface such as the Google Cloud Console. So these are the different interfaces that Google Cloud provides, and in general what APIs have. But in order to digest it and get a fix to the topic of API, let's walk through a real life example. And that's of you are sitting with the TV remote control in your hand and you would like to watch something on the TV. And what you simply do is you click on one of the buttons on the TV remote, you give an input to the TV remote, and let's say you want to watch something that relates to entertainment. So you press a button and you get that channel where entertainment is being provided to you as the response from the TV. But let's say you want to watch something which gives you information or knowledge. So you press another button on the remote and you get the required response as that channel. So what you're doing right here is there is an interface which is the TV remote control, and you are pressing the different buttons on it. And while doing so, you are sending a request via the remote for the TV to give you an output, and you get exactly that. But we all know that in order for the remote control to work, there is a battery cell or there's some charging that goes into the remote control for it to work. And how is that charge given to the remote control? By some battery. And when we think of this example, analogous to an API, we have the battery cell acting as the API key. The API key is the thing that allows us to interact with this interface, to interact with this API and get the response from it. And continuing with the analogy, we have this TV remote acting as the interface between us, who is the application or the user, who is sending the input or the request by pressing a button on the remote, that is the interface, and we get the required response as the channel, the different channels that can be viewed on the TV. So this is the real life example in analogous to an API. I hope this example is clear to everyone. If it's clear, can I get a few yeses in the chat or doubts if any? Okay, we have. Thank you for the response. And now, since it's clear what is an API, we can continue to deal with what exactly is natural language processing. So natural language processing is that domain of artificial intelligence and linguistics combined together that deals with the process of enabling a computer or writing a program so that we can parse, understand, analyze, and even generate human language. So let's go one by one with these different words. So parse means to be able to read the human language that we have. So what I am speaking to you, the speech that is in English or some other language, it could be in some other language. So the computer should be able to read and recognize the different characters that are there. So that is parsing the text or listening to the speech, converting it into text, and then understanding it. Then comes the analysis part, that this text could be taken through several processes, such as summarizing the text, such as tokenizing it, and different functions that we'll look later when dealing with the natural language API that GCP provides. So to the right, you can see this diagram where we have deep learning, machine learning, and artificial intelligence coming together. And right here, we have NLU, which is natural language understanding. That is, there is an up and coming technology called as transformers, which applies deep learning to natural language processing, and we are able to generate an output from it. And this has applications in sentiment analysis. We also have natural language generation, and an example of it is having a chatbot. So those are the different subfields of natural language processing, and they require the study of the language, which is linguistics. So bringing these two together, we have NLP in front of us. Now let's look at the different applications of NLP. First thing we have is a named entity recognition, and this is one such application of NLP that we'll be looking in the quick lab. So NER, or named entity recognition, means that we are labeling parts of the text with entities such as person, location, country, etc., or the different labels that we want to give that are defined in the dataset or the model that we're using. We'll look at it in detail in the quick lab later, so hold on to that thought. Next up, we have part of speech tagging, which means the different parts of speech which can be which can be the pronoun, the proper noun, common noun, verbs, adjectives, etc. from the text are identified. So this includes a lot of linguistic study. Then we have text categorization, and this is a very famous application of NLP which we see every day in Gmail, that we have a separate inbox for spam emails, and this spam or ham detection can be done by parsing the text and identifying the kind of words that are present in there. So this is a major application of NLP. Then we have sentiment analysis as well, which comes under natural language understanding. And one such example can be categorizing between positive and negative reviews. That is, understanding with the kind of words that are there in the text, we are able to say that this user is giving a positive review or a negative review. And we will also see sentiment analysis with the natural language API in the quick lab. Then we also have question and answering, which comes under natural language understanding. And one such example is chatbots. And chatbots are something that is extensively dealt with Google Cloud Platform's Dialogflow. That's not something we'll be dealing with today, but that's an amazing application of NLP. So are there any doubts with the part of what is NLP or what are the different applications of NLP that we'll be looking to? If that's clear, then do confirm in the chat with a yes, or if there are any doubts, I'll be welcome to take them up. Okay, great. Thank you, Aryan. Now moving forward to named entity recognition, as you can see in the figure, I've highlighted named entity recognition. So that's what we'll be dealing with in today's quick lab. So before we get on to named entity recognition in specific, let's first get the overview of the different APIs powered by AI, artificial intelligence, that GCP offers to us. The first one that is the natural language processing API that we'll be looking today, that is there. Then we have the speech to text API, which you can deal with it later. That is a similar quick lab, and that has text that has speech in different languages being processed into text. That is one such quick lab that is there, and the API that is offered by GCP. Then we also have video intelligence, which is able to detect the objects or the different tracking that can be done, or it can also detect explicit content in the video that is provided to it. So there is an API that GCP offers for that as well. And the quick lab is also provided for the same. So speech to text and video intelligence are the two quick labs that are provided in the track 2, but those won't be dealt with today. Those are quite similar to NLP API, so those can be done as a homework per se. And finally, we have the Cloud Vision API. This is a quick lab. The quick lab for this is not given in the track 2, but this is a major and very important API that even the video intelligence API uses. So we will be looking at NLP API and the Cloud Vision API today. So the first and the fourth one, these are the two APIs we'll be looking at today. Now coming to the quick lab and the named entity recognition part that we'll be looking at today. So we'll be using the command line interface, we'll be using the command line utility gcloud, and the service that we are using is ML. In that, we are going to use the natural language API. So we use gcloud ML language, and we are using or we are trying to do named entity recognition. So we use analyze entities. And in the quick lab, we have one such sentence, which is Michelangelo Caravaggio, Italian painter, is known for the calling of Saint Matthew. And right here we have Michelangelo Caravaggio. The name of this person, the name is taken into consideration and it is labeled as person. That is one such entity which is named. Then we have Italian painter, out of which Italian or Italy is taken into consideration and labeled as location. And finally, we have the calling of Saint Matthew, which is considered and named as an event. We'll be looking into this in detail in the quick lab. So do follow along with me. I'll be sharing the link of the quick lab now in the chat. This is the quick lab that I have in front of me, which takes up the cloud natural language API. I'll simply be starting with the quick lab. Just a refresh for the page. Okay. You can follow along with me. Can I get a yes in the chat if you are following along with me? All right, we are good to go. We open the Google Cloud Console. The same steps, putting in the username, then the password. This is the account that is associated with the quick lab that we are doing. This is unique for every quick lab and cannot be replicated. So don't try to log into any previous account that you have used. And then we confirm with the policies. Now we are free to use our Cloud Console, which is associated with our quick lab. And we'll first begin with activating the Cloud Shell. This is a virtual machine that is provided by Quick Lab, and it also contains 5 GB of persistent storage. So while we wait for the Cloud Shell machine to be provisioned, let's read the instructions. So as said earlier in the example, in order for the API to work, or in order for the remote control to work, we need a battery cell for it. So the battery cell right here that we have is our API key. So in order to generate it, these are the steps that we need to follow. Firstly, we will create an environment variable of the name as Google Cloud Project. So I can simply copy the project ID, export Google Cloud Project, and I have created the environment variable to be used in any other command. And right here we have the gcloud command line utility being used for the IAM service, which is Identity Access and Management Service. And we are using its option, which is service accounts. And we are creating a service account called as my natlang SA. This is the my natural language processing account that I'm using, service account that I'm using. And the name of that account should be my natural language account service. So I'll just paste that command in the Cloud Shell, and the API call is being made by gcloud to their service, which is IAM. And now my account has been created. After that, I can create an API key for the service that I'm using. So we are using the command, which is gcloud IAM. The service we are using is IAM, Identity Access and Management. The service account part is being used of IAM, and we are creating the keys, the different keys associated with the account. So not only we are activating or enabling the different APIs of the APIs that gcloud provides, we are not only activating the cloud natural language API, we are activating other APIs as well. And now we copy this part of the key that is contained in the JSON file into another environment variable, which is Google Application Credentials. So we do that, and we have created the API. Can I get a yes in the chat if you are through with this part, with the 50 out of 100 score in the quick lab? Can I get a yes in the chat, or any doubt if you are unable to follow till here? Okay, we have Prasad saying yes. So we can continue. So this part of creating an API key is common for all labs. That is for the cloud natural language API, the video intelligence API, as well as the speech to text API. So there is no need to repeat this part for those labs. So you can follow along the same steps later on as homework, as said earlier. Now, as given in the lab, even though this lab seems to have a huge amount of time given to it, which is of 40 minutes, and we are through 5 minutes of it, but it will only take 10 minutes for us to make an API request, because in this lab, in this quick lab, Quick Lab has already provided with us a virtual machine where we can run our API request. So if we go to our compute engine in the console, let's find compute engine right here. And if we go to virtual machine instances, we will find out that there is already a Linux instance that has been created for us. And as per the instructions, we have to run the enabled APIs right here in the Linux instance. But for assurance, let's see if our APIs have been enabled or not. So we go to APIs and services, the library of different APIs that GCP provides, and we simply search for natural language. And we get the cloud natural language API here, and it has already been enabled for us. So now we can go to our virtual machine and SSH into it, so that we'll be able to execute, or we'll be able to make API request. So here we have the compute engine, and we go to our VM instances. And as per the instructions, we SSH into it. That is, we are initiating a connection with our virtual machine. We are transferring our keys to it so that we can make those API calls. This may take a while for some, or it might occur quickly, so it occurred. Now we have to create our content, or we have to create the text on which we have to create the analysis. So right here you can see we are using gcloud ML language. So that is the gcloud command line utility, and we are using the ML service for languages, that is the natural, and we are using the function which is analyze entities. In that, we are providing the content as seen earlier, which is Michelangelo Caravaggio, Italian painter, is known for the calling of Saint Matthew, and we are piping or we are sending that result into a JSON file, which is result.json. So we'll do the same. Are you guys able to see my SSH? Or else I can simply share my entire screen. All right, I'll share my entire screen and then you'll be able to see it. So quickly getting on to the SSH. So as shown right here, you can see we are using G-Cloud ML language analyze entities. We do the same on the command line, and result.json is created for us. So if we check the contents of the directory, we can see that there is a result.json. And if we would like to see the contents of the same, we would get this huge text. And this is the same output that is there in the quick lab. So we can better refer to that. So this is the JSON file that's created for us by doing the named entity recognition. This is the result that we generate. And we can see right here, Michelangelo Caravaggio has been labeled as a person. Then we also have some metadata that only and only Google Cloud Platform is able to provide by using its machine learning model that has been already trained on it. So this is the metadata that is created for us. Then salience is the relevance of this entity in the text, in the entire text. And then we see the mention that Michelangelo Caravaggio, this entity begins at character 0 in the given text, and it is a proper noun. So even the part of speech is done for us. So all this can be done on any of the text that you provide to the Cloud Natural Language API. Then even painter is identified as a common noun. Then we have another entity which is Italian, and the type of that entity is location, as shown in the slide earlier. Then its salience is 0.13, that this is not so relevant to the kind of text that we have. And finally, we have the calling of Saint Matthew as an event. So this is the kind of named entity recognition that you can do. Now you may think that how named entity recognition is useful for us. So you can take an example of a data set or some model that you want to use to find through a huge text. You want to look into news articles, or you want to look into huge amounts of text for certain keywords, or you want to look for certain entities that you have defined, such as person or country or an event. So if you want to look for those, it will become a tedious task for you to read through everything manually. And if you consider someone such as a lawyer who gets lakhs and lakhs of documents to process, they can't go and read for a single line of the law or the prosecution that is being given to their client. They'll simply put those documents through a named entity recognition, and that model will be able to generate the different places, such as we can have the begin offset. We'll have those different places in the large text where this thing is occurring, and the lawyer can just simply go and refer to those. So that is one such use case of named entity recognition. And now we can do the same for what we have as, I'll just pull up the command here. If you can see at the bottom here, right here, we have given the command as G-Cloud ML language analyze entities. Now, according to the API documentation that you can find later, let's first rename the output file as, let's say, result1. You can even analyze the sentiment or classify the text or even analyze the syntax. So what I can simply do is change the content of the text to, let's say, today is a good day. Simple as that. And what we would like to do is we would like to analyze the sentiment of this text. That is saying today is a good day, a positive or a negative sentiment thing. We send the API request and we find the result in result1.json. and we see that the natural language API tells us that the sentiment of the language given is English. The sentence has a magnitude or a positive score of 0.9. That is, there is 90% certainty that today is a good day is a positive sentence, and that obviously is true. So you can use the natural language API, the cloud natural language API, to process huge amounts of text in a similar fashion with analyze sentiment, analyze entities, even analyze entity sentiment, and etc. So that is how you can use the power of the cloud natural language API. Now you can exit this lab, and I will move on to show you the cloud vision API, which I've used in a project in the past. So if you're done with this lab, you will just end the lab. All right. If you're done with the lab, could you acknowledge in the chat with a yes? Great. We have Prasad who has done the lab along with us. Now we can. This is the cloud console of one of the projects I have created in the past. So this project is named as EcoConnect, and let me show you the Cloud Vision API that was used in this. This is the Cloud Vision API, also known as the AutoML Vision API, because the machine learning model that is created right here is all automatic. We have the data sets right here, and here I have created a single label classification data set, which is of TrashNet, which is called as TrashNet data. Now you would think, what exactly is TrashNet? That is, this is a data set that has the different kinds of recyclable or non-recyclable garbages, which are classified into this. You can even upload your own data set by having a name right here. The objective can be a single label classification, multi-label classification, or an object detection. So you can, in the future, you can create your own data set in such a way. Then let's go to the model that was created. So what I had simply done earlier this year was that I had uploaded a zip file which contained images of a generic trash, plastic, paper, metal, glass, cardboard. So these are the different labels that I had given to it. Along with that, there was a text file showing the different names of these labels. And I had to simply upload the zip file onto this dataset panel. I had to simply upload my dataset. And what was done is that here I went to the import, I selected the file, then I could see the different images that I had uploaded. These are the different images that I had uploaded, and they were all labeled by me. Then came the training part. The training part is something that Google Cloud API is the Cloud Vision API is able to do for us, and it generated a 0.977 average precision model for me, and that's amazing. Given that I only had 2,500 images, it was able to generate such an amazing model for me, and I did not have to write a single line of Python, Java, or any other programming language. This was all done automatically, and hence the name AutoML Cloud Vision API. And I can even see the different evaluation that was given to me for my model with the false positives, false negatives, that is the confusion matrix given below, the recall and precision right here. So without writing a single line of code, you can leverage the power of these APIs with your data. If you have your data ready and you want to put it through an analysis, and it includes natural language or computer vision or some video intelligence or speech to text even, then Google Cloud's API, AI powered APIs are there for you. And if there are any doubts, I would like to take that up, and I'm done with my part. Or if everything is clear, you could acknowledge in the chat with a yes. Great. So there don't seem to be any doubts. So I would simply hand it back to Riddhi to take the session forward.
Oh, the Mentimeter slide, you were going to share it, right?
Right, but that's after the session ends.
Oh, okay. So I would like to thank all of you for attending the session. I hope you all might have learned a lot of things, and I really am looking forward to you all to complete Quest 2 of Track 2. If you have any doubts, you can always ask on Slack. And I'm also looking forward to a lot of participations for the quiz today. So all the best for the quiz, and thank you for joining the session.
You could stop the recording now, and then we can continue with Mentimeter.